Hello, hi Lisette.
Hello, Nemanya.
Yeah, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Okay, nice to see you. So Lisette Spaargaren is today with me, and we are talking about capoeira. You're a capoeira teacher, and when we were talking about this conversation and everything, there are like many things you can share, and maybe we can start with your personal story. How did you discover capoeira? You also tried and did many other things and many other martial arts and so on. But yeah, you discovered and you chose capoeira over everything. And I would really like to ask you to share your personal story.
Yeah, okay. So I started capoeira actually because before I used to do dance, kung fu and gymnastics. And then I was living in the Netherlands, and then I went to study in England, and there I encountered capoeira, and I thought, well, this is just a combination of kung fu, gymnastics and dance. So that's why I continued. And after my studies, I had the possibility to travel around the world. And so I went to Brazil because when I was at the university, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to Brazil on my world trip. And when I was in Brazil, I went, this is what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. But then I could continue. And through a friend, I also managed to go to Shaolin and to train 1 month Kung Fu there with the Shaolin monks. Which was an amazing experience. And there I realized, okay, no, it's actually capoeira that I really want to continue. And also, if I really want to learn it, I really need to live in the country of where it comes from. So capoeira comes from Brazil originally. So I decided to, after my world trip, to live in Brazil and to really learn capoeira in Brazil.
I understand. But when you, for example, compare all these different activities that you tried in different countries, so you also traveled to China, right? Okay. And there must be something that, at some point was like, this is nice and lovely and useful, good for me and so on. But, capoeira is the choice. Is there something, so specific, something,
I think what it is that what I really love about Kung Fu or any sort of martial art is that every movement has a function. Mm-hmm. So you don't just do it out of beauty like you do with, for instance, dance. It's all about aesthetics within dance. So I love the fact that every movement has a function. And but with Kung Fu, and specifically in China, I realized that there is a very strong tradition where you have to execute the movements in a particular way. And in capoeira, I felt much more freedom and freedom of expression, which actually comes again through the music, which is within dance. Within dance, you have music and you express your body through music. And this is what I can do in capoeira, is express myself through my body. Because of the music, so that's what Kung Fu doesn't have. And then with Kung Fu, with gymnastics, I just really love the acrobatics. I love the feeling of standing on my hands. I love the feeling of doing jumps, and so this is why I love capoeira so much, because of those elements of of jumping, of acrobatics, of dancing, of expression, of music. But everything has a function, so that's what you're doing it for.
Yeah, and that's a nice point, like when you talk about freedom, being free and so on. And this is probably, I guess, the point when we can move on with the story. So to talk maybe a little bit more about capoeira, and maybe you can try to explain, to say more about its origin, history, how it started, where was it born, and stuff like that. So this is like a quite general question for you, so that you can start explaining. Then maybe I will just interrupt you from time to time in order to add some questions.
Okay, yeah. Well, when I explain capoeira, I always emphasize the fact that that it's best to understand it from its historic perspective, from the slave history. And I always say capoeira was a way for the slaves to make themselves physically and mentally free. So I think when one understands that perspective, then one understands why the movements are the way they are, and why the strategy is the way it is, and why the music is the way it is. So I think that's a very important point. Now, the slaves originally were taken by the Portuguese and also the Dutch slave trade from Africa to Brazil. So there is always within capoeira this debate of is capoeira African from Africa or is it Brazilian? They haven't found in research, they haven't found capoeira itself actually in Africa. They've sort of found elements of combat and combat art and combat forms, dance, but capoeira itself, they didn't sort of find in Africa. So the idea is that capoeira originated in Brazil because the necessity for the people who were taken away from Africa and brought into slavery, they obviously wanted to free themselves from slavery. So the necessity to free yourself from slavery came in Brazil. And so that's why they had the theory, there's this other stronger theory, which I more follow, is that that capoeira originated in Brazil, but obviously was created by the slaves, mainly coming from Africa. So the roots are African and Brazilian. So they say Afro-Brazilian.
Yeah, and that's actually one of those questions. Now I want to add this question actually at this point when we talk about capoeira and slavery. Like, what can we say about ideological background, if anything, and you know, like kind of ideological background and some kind of universal message that maybe we can find in capoeira in terms of slavery?
Well, I think one should never forget the horrors of slavery, and one could never imagine how it was to live in slavery and be a slave. So I always want to be very careful with this. But I think if you imagine that it comes from that, and just sort of imagine the horrors, and imagine being you know, being in slavery, being caught, not being free. I think many people nowadays, also in modern times, so sometimes feel they are working as a slave, or they are not free to do what they want to do. And then the strategies of capoeira can help, I think, in getting away from this freedom. And the strategy of capoeira works very much on resilience, on building resilience through the idea of resistance or resistência, and how to build resistência through also the physical movement and the music, but also other forms. There's other strategies. It's called the malandragem or malícia or mandinga, and that's to do with camouflaging and cunning and surprise tactics. Sometimes it's a bit morally or ethically questionable, but those strategies, they help you to form resilience, and then when there's adversity, when there's difficult times, problems, to kind of use the same strategy also in your normal life outside of the capoeira roda or outside of the capoeira. And I think in this form, the philosophy or the strategy or the ideology of capoeira could be beneficial for people also to help them in their sort of in their normal lives when they feel this sense of not being free, perhaps.
But I'm sorry.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, but that's actually one of those things. When I look at it, and you understand that actually, and we spoke about it and stuff like that, you understand that actually I'm not so much familiar with the art, with the dance. So how can we define it? Is it a dance? Is it a martial art? Is it an art by itself? And when we are talking also about slavery and this, let's say, ideological idea that we can find in its background, how does it affect, for example, exactly what you said, physical movements, physical actions, let's say, the color of the dance?
Well, I always say it's everything that you said, and it's even more. So it is not just a martial art or just dance or just music. It's all those things. It's physical movements. It is fight. It is dance. It is martial art. It's all everything put together. So I think what makes it so powerful is the combination of the movements together with the live music, that you have in a hard, or not always in training, but definitely in a hard, when everything comes together. And so the form, which is a circle, when you have a capoeira roda, together with the strategies, that together is capoeira. So that would be sort of, in that sense, the definition: the movements, the music, and the form.
And also when we talk about, okay, so this is to some extent everything. And one question that is quite important to me when talking about this kind of activities, like philosophy, ideology, and religion, like, is there something like, are there religious ideas in capoeira? Does it have to do anything with religion, or this is totally, like religion free? Because even when we talk about some martial arts, we can find something like less touchable wisdom, and then some, let's say, less rational ideas in background.
Yeah.
So how does it work with capoeira?
Well, capoeira is not a religion, but you can express your religion in capoeira. So you can express this when you sing songs. So certain capoeiristas, so people who play capoeira, they have a certain religion, and in the song that they choose to sing, they express their religion. So they praise God, for instance, if they belong sort of more perhaps to a Christian religion. Coming back to the sort of the slave history or the African roots, the slaves obviously brought their religions to Brazil, and these were prohibited by the Portuguese, by the slave owners. So they kind of camouflage everything, and through all the different tribes that came together, sort of kind of a new religion kind of appeared, and this is called candomblé. And candomblé works with entities and spirits, which through sort of rhythmic drumming, people get into a trance-like state. And I believe that this idea of rhythmic drumming, or of rhythm, that is also in the music in capoeira, is kind of related from that slave history, and that you can find in capoeira. And sometimes when all the elements are very powerful, and there's a strong leader and strong musicianship, people can also have this sort of trance-like state or altered state of consciousness. And that also can happen in capoeira. It doesn't happen often all the time, but it can happen. And I think it also has to do with this, with these aspects that are also in this religion of candomblé.
Yes,
and there's also some capoeiristas in the capoeira. They also have a candomblé background, so they also go to a place where candomblé is practiced, and they bring also those elements into capoeira, and they sing songs that praise, so not God, but praise the saints, praise the orishas that you have in candomblé.
Yeah, so it doesn't come it doesn't originate from religious context, but it doesn't, let's say, prohibit a religious expression by those practicing.
Yes, but I
Yeah.
think the slave history again is very strong.
Yeah.
You know, is strongly related to capoeira and the African sort of practices there. They come back into capoeira, but it is not a religion. That's very strong. So if you don't have a religion, you don't have to express it. I personally do not have a religion, so I choose as a leader of Capoeira Roda not to sing certain songs that are very religious. I choose not to sing them or not to teach them also, but I always explain to the students that they do exist and that it is important to know about them.
Yeah, but also when you say that this is a kind of philosophy, a kind of philosophical system, can we talk about some written proofs, some books, some inheritance, written inheritance that is, for example, important or valuable for us today in order to learn and understand this system, this dance, this art better? Like, for example, when we talk about Buddhism, Hinduism, Kung Fu and stuff like that. So
well, capoeira comes from an oral tradition. So nothing is written down. So there is in that sense no written document somewhere in the old history, because everything was passed on orally within the African religions, or at least I'm not so sure about that, to be honest. But the slaves were obviously not allowed to follow education, so many didn't learn to read or write. And up to this, well, I remember when I was living in Brazil, I also met an illiterate master, and I was very shocked or surprised that sort of still exists. But it also still exists in Brazil, and also, well, I think in many countries, but there is no written proof in that sense. However, I do believe very much that the proof is in the songs, because the songs were a way to pass on the history and to pass on the knowledge, and this was done orally. And there's many, when you analyze the songs, there's many references to certain historical aspects within the capoeira. That within the capoeira, or within sort of history or wisdom that's been passed on. And if you then have more historical research, they sometimes find out why that song came about, basically. But you have to first know which song is modern and which song is already very old, and where that all comes from. But that's like a whole knowledge in itself. But that's where the written proof is, to me, in that sense. It's not written, it's oral.
Is it for everyone? Like, for example, I feel that maybe I'm not good enough at sport activities, and maybe I'm even shy or someone. Is it in that sense for everyone? You remember when we spoke about those different levels and more talented and less talented people? So
capoeira is, I say capoeira is definitely for everybody, but it's for everybody who wishes to put in time and energy. Then everybody can learn it. I mean, there's obviously certain level up to certain levels, also through physical limitations one might have. But I always say, because some people say, but I'm not flexible, I can't do capoeira. No, you become flexible. So you become flexible. I can't do capoeira because I can't sing. Well, you learn how to sing, you become musical. I'm not strong. You become strong through the trainings and through when you play Capoeira and Roda, you become all those things. And it depends on where you start off, obviously. You know, if you already start from here because you have done other martial arts or other sports or other music, then you go higher. And then it's a matter of hours, of just doing hours. The more hours you do capoeira, the better you become.
And that's actually a very good lead to the next question, which is maybe...
Just coming back, just one more thing is also the thing about shy or something like that, is that capoeira also help because it's very social, because you do it in a group, and the Roda is a group event, and there's many other capoeira events throughout the years. People become more sociable and become less shy, because they also gain confidence. Capoeira also works on the psychological things of gaining confidence or courage. So So people become that again. It's not just physically and musically, but also the psychological benefits they have.
I love it. I love it because now actually we can move to the next question, which is maybe one of the most important questions, at least from my point of view, for this conversation and today. And we spoke about it because you also work on some kind of research which aims to estimate positive effects, positive sides of this discipline. Then we can talk probably, I guess, like about anything human, we can talk about positive and negative sides. But I really want you to share, to tell me more about positive sides in terms of mental, psychological health and physical health. So what are positive sides or effects of this art?
Well, from a physical point of view, I think it really works on your fitness, on your stamina. And this is also aided by the music. Through the music, you become less sort of tired. So you go on, you practice that. You also become stronger because you need to, you need to stand on your hands. You need to press up, push up from the ground. You become more flexible because you need to kick high. If you want to reach the face of the other person, you need to get the height of the head at least. So you become also flexible through capoeira. I think those are, few of those physical benefits. Some say that it's a kind of like the all-round best sort of thing for working on all sorts of muscles and all sorts of fitness. I always think those claims are a bit, you always have to be careful with those claims, but I know that the movements are high, are low, you jump, you're down on the ground, you stand on your hands, so you use your arm muscles, you use your leg muscles because you jump. So in that sense, I do think the physical aspect is very strong. And then the music aids people, it has an effect on mood often, music in a positive way. So it makes people feel happy. So listening to music makes people happy. So listening to capoeira music and moving your body through with the music, or also playing the instruments and singing and clapping, all those have effect on feeling happy. So and if you feel happy, then you have less negative thoughts, and if you have lots and lots of negative thoughts, that people end up being depressed, ending up having depression. So capoeira can aid through the music and through the physical movement also aid those negative thoughts and make people more happy. Often also there's lots of funny moments and jokes in capoeira, so then people laugh, and laughter helps to make you happy and helps to change the mood. And I think also the fact that I said before that it's a social thing. So capoeira is when its ideal form, you do it in a roda, and so in a roda you have the musicians who play live music. You have people standing or sitting in a circle, and they sing, or sometimes they also clap, and then you have the two people in the middle executing the movement, dancing, fighting, however you wish to explain it. So because it's a group social thing, together with the music, people get into like a certain state where it can be called entrainment, where sort of the vibrations of everybody sort of become together into sort of one harmonious, hopefully harmonious effect. And this again has a psychological effect on the mind when you become entrained, when you get into a flow also through the movements, etc., and makes people again happier, and again fights depression, fights negative thoughts. Also, when you're playing physically with someone else, you are in the moment, and they often, lots of people say that this being in the moment is psychologically very beneficial for mental health. Because I say, look, if you don't pay attention, you get a foot in your face. You have to be in the moment. You can't just wander off with your thoughts because you get kicked in the face. It's very, you have to be there. So I think those are elements, and then the strategy itself also helps you. This is what I said before, the resilience to fight it gives you tools to fight difficulty in your life, fight problems. In the harder, you forget about the problems because you're in the moment. But it's also all those strategies I said before that'll help you physically and mentally to become stronger.
Hey, Lisette, it's a very important question. So when we talk about excuses and stuff like that, you know, I'm not flexible, I'm not this, I'm like that, and so on. But if you're always in pain, for example, even people can do capoeira and get excellent results in pain. And I know that this question is quite personal for you, but I think it's quite important to share it.
Yeah, so I had a motorbike accident about 10 years ago, and I broke my back, I smashed my right heel and broke my left calf and shin bone. For this, I had 5 operations as I was 6 months in a wheelchair. And since then, I'm a chronic pain patient. The doctor said that I would be 16%, I'm 16% disabled, basically. So I have this chronic pain, and I have pain when I play capoeira. Specifically, if I play capoeira for a long time, I have pain in my foot. However, I don't have pain in my back when I play capoeira, but I have it when I sit a long time, and certain acrobatic movements also. But I think, again, for me personally, the wish for me to not stop capoeira, but to continue capoeira made me sort of go on and go, no, I don't want to give up capoeira. I need to do this. I need to do this. So I'm going to get better after this accident, and I'm going to continue. And then you also realize that it's just physical exercises that will get you better. So obviously, you have to find where your limit is. So like, when are you doing too much and you're going over the top and making it worse, and up to which moment is it good to continue? So that is difficult. And also, I think it's capoeira will not completely heal you. You need also other, you know, therapies to aid you in that, physiotherapy, etc. But I think through this music of capoeira, and through this idea of entrainment, for instance, or idea of flow, you can go on in capoeira because you forget about your pain, because I think it has to do with neurotransmitters and chemicals in your brain, and endorphins and dopamine and so on, that numb pain. And therefore you are like, how the hell can I do this? You know, I'm in so much pain, I can still do it. And I think it's because of the release of all these neurotransmitters, which is through physical exercise and through music, you can go on. Like I said also before, with regards to the stamina, you keep going. I mean, after the capoeira harder, you sometimes have pain when all these neurotransmitters are not in your body anymore, and then the pain comes back. But because you always go back to capoeira, you get better. And I can do things that the doctor said I would not be able to do anymore. And it is because of capoeira, and it's because of sort of this inspiration that the capoeira gives you, and the actual physical exercises and music that releases these neurotransmitters in order for you to execute all the movements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But given that this is also fight, I forgot to ask you that when you mentioned this word, fight. Does it mean that it is, or it might be, violent?
So again, they say in the times of slavery, it was a way for the slaves to fight themselves free. So when they escaped and someone came behind them, they didn't have weapons, so they only had their own body to protect themselves or to fight against it. So yes, it is, in that sense, it's fight. But nowadays it's more about the control. The control of the mind, control of the body, so that you kick as close enough that the other person feels the threat, but you don't actually hit them. But sometimes in trainings, I take like a mat and I make them really kick the mat, so they get the feeling of it, of really kicking with force, basically. But within capoeira, it's a lot more about dodging and about evading instead of hard blocking. Like in Kung Fu, when when something comes, you kind of block it. and then you attack back, you counter-attack. But in Capoeira, you would evade first, because everything again is more camouflaged in Capoeira. It's all about you smile and you wait until the person thinks, oh, he's not hungry anymore. And then the guard comes down, and that's the moment you attack. So there's, sort of patience involved in finding the right moment of attack, and all those sort of strategies I mentioned before, because of the slaves having to camouflage, their way of resistance. They couldn't be often overtly going against, the people in power. They had to do it, and they work a lot also on undermining morally the person, making the other person feel bad or inferior by all sorts of, camouflaged malandrage way.
For someone to practice or to be a very well experienced player or practitioner, is it necessary to speak Portuguese?
Yeah, well,
I'm asking you because I know that you do. You do speak.
Yes, I do. Well, I've met a person who could play fantastic and been playing for years and years and years, and was just an amazing player and didn't speak Portuguese, just, very, very basics. So in that sense, because Capoeira is not verbal and it is through the body, in that sense, you don't need to speak it. However, you also sing the songs, and the songs are all in Portuguese. And if you don't know what you're singing or what the meaning is, there's obviously all the messages that are sent through the capoeira are lost. So I think this is a big part of it. So if you don't speak Portuguese, you miss that part. And then the third thing is just, I think, every language you speak enriches you, and it makes you be able to speak to so many more people in the world and gain more information and exchange and share. So that I always say, learn Portuguese. If you really want to understand capoeira, learn Portuguese, because then you'll understand the culture of the Brazilians better. You want where originally, how they think, how they in general think, because obviously the Brazilian culture is reflected in the capoeira and in the way they interact and in the way they are. So if you don't speak it, you lose enormous amounts. But it doesn't mean that you can't start because you don't speak Portuguese, or you can't do capoeira because you don't speak Portuguese, because you can do the movements.
So can we find, for example, given that you're also a teacher, can we find excellent teachers who are not fluent or who do not speak Portuguese at all? Is it something like that possible? Because you remember that we also spoke about those aspects, to be a man, then to be from South America and stuff like that. So there are also those cultural aspects of capoeira. But
excellence is obviously, the definition of excellence is then difficult. What is excellent in that sort of sense. But I know teachers who do not speak so well Portuguese, but in their classes they teach in a very creative way, varied way, very thoughtful way, so that the students are interested and the students develop. So I think that aspect, if you don't speak Portuguese, is not affected. And then I think the other thing that's extremely important is when you are leader of roda, so you are a teacher also, is that you know how to create energy. And through that also you do not need to know physically the word, but because you're singing, when you're singing, it's important to sing with emotion. So again, the words are not so important, but the emotion of the singing is. But therefore you do need to know what you're singing in order to know what the song is about and sort of which emotion you can put into the song. So again, I mean, it's difficult to say. Then if you don't speak Portuguese, you can't be an excellent teacher. I think you can get very, very far, but because capoeira has so many elements, you can't be everything. You can't be everything anyway. And I know, Brazilians who are just amazing capoeira players and amazing in the roda and how they create the energy and how they lead the roda. But when they actually teach in class, they're not so good, because sometimes they miss some kind of methodology, or they miss insight into working with people or insight into building up a class in an interesting way. So then I think they're sometimes terrible when I follow a class, but then when I see them play an instrument, I'm like, oh wow, they are excellent.
Yeah.
So I think it's
all it can be also about teaching, sometimes great experts are not maybe the best teachers, and maybe it's not, just when we talk about,
I think you have the art of capoeira and you have the art of teaching. So, and as a capoeira teacher, you need to have both, right? But yeah.
You also say that, for example, you don't like this kind of stereotypes. Okay, you're now, let's be less politically correct, like you're white capoeira teacher, and plus, my God, you're even a woman. But you don't want this kind of mark. You don't want this kind of idea like, oh, yes, I know her. So how does it work? And why actually that idea? I mean, what is wrong with that being, like woman and plus white teacher of capoeira?
Well, there's obviously nothing wrong with it. It's just it's not very common. So in the capoeira world, because capoeira comes from Brazil, obviously Brazilian teachers are much more. You can find much more Brazilian teachers than the non-Brazilian teachers. Oh, I don't know if that's true anymore, because capoeira is in more than 150 countries all over the world. So there's many capoeira teachers. But because it's still from there, it's seen as more original or more authentic than if a European or non-Brazilian person teaches capoeira. And I sort of partly also still agree with this because of this sort of Brazilian culture that I was telling you about before. But then there's also not so many women in capoeira. But this is also, there's more capoeira women now in capoeira than when I started about 20 years ago. And I think it just has to do also again with Brazilian culture and the status of the woman in Brazil. Sort of, you compare it with sort of the status of the woman in the Netherlands. So I think it kind of the reflection of society is also found in capoeira. And because the status of the woman in Brazil was and still not is so equal as it is, for instance, in the Netherlands, there's not that many female teachers that sort of lead capoeira schools, and there's not so many female masters as there are male masters. So if you are non-Brazilian and female, it's just something that's not so common.
Okay.
And if something's not so common, so often something is not accepted also. So I think that's the issue, but I just sort of go on and continue anyway. So that's the only thing. But there's a lot of prejudice going on. But I think it goes on in all sorts of forms and ways. I mean, you speak with capoeira teachers, and then they say, oh, there was a lot of racism because they're white, or a lot of racism because they're black, or a lot of prejudice because they're small, or prejudice because they're fat, or prejudice because they are white, or whatever it is. You realize that, gosh, lots of people are often confronted with prejudice, no matter what it is that you are. So.
Yeah. Yes. And here actually we come to the last part of the conversation, which is, like you're a teacher and you have your own school. And when did you start doing that? Maybe actually a bit better question is, what is capoeira for you? Is it just, something you do in your spare time? And then let's explain that part, and then let's move on to this part about the school.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know, because maybe the beginning of the school actually explains the second question you wanted to start off with, because when I was living in when I told you before, is that when I went to Brazil for my trip, I was like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And then I lived there for 2 years, but then it was difficult to stay in Brazil through visa issues. So I had to sort of go back to the Netherlands, but I was like, I said to the Capoeira Mestre I was training with, I said, but I need to take Capoeira with me. I can't not do it. I want to do it also in the Netherlands. And as I was an English teacher in Brazil, sort of, you know, earning money being an English teacher, and I enjoyed the aspect of teaching, sort of the idea came to then teach Capoeira in the Netherlands, but I wasn't far enough to teach on my own and open a school sort of on my own. So the master authorized me to open up a school in the Netherlands, but take another teacher with me. So this is what I did, and this is how the school came. So the school came because I wanted to continue Capoeira, and the only way to continue Capoeira is to create your own school where you can then also train it. And so I ran the school together with another Brazilian teacher for 7 years or something, and then I continued on my own. And this sort of the school came about because Capoeira meant so much for me. It's something that I wanted to continue doing. And I think it's something you can't really explain. I think it's a bit like love, or when you're in a relationship, you just know, okay, I want to be with this person. And so you do, you make sure that you can be with this person and continue with this person. So I think it's like a feeling of love that I also have for Capoeira, that I continue doing it. And that even when you run a school, there's all these all these difficulties in running a school, you continue through all the difficult bits because you just love doing it. And also I also love teaching. So I have these two very lucky aspects, that I love teaching and I love Capoeira. So.
And yeah, your short experience, now I must ask you that, you know, that short experience of teaching English and also learning and teaching Capoeira, did you find anything that teaching by itself, teaching a language and then teaching this kind of activity, does it have something in common?
Yes,
like teaching and teaching.
Yeah, it's the look in the eyes of the student that first doesn't know and then knows, and first cannot do something and then can, and to be able to help somebody else give this tool, this thing, is an amazing experience. And it's similar whether it's teaching English or teaching Capoeira. You're giving people tools, you're giving people skills, you're giving people power, and you're giving them this great sensation of suddenly being able to do something, or suddenly knowing something that you didn't know before. I think that's amazing. So it's wonderful to see always when, you know, kids, when they go, oh, look, Lisette, I can do it. And it's a very exciting moment. Yeah.
And, you know, as we know that the point of this conversation is also to encourage someone. And, you know, you found your love, your passion, you had been traveling across the world in order to find it, to learn it in the best possible way and so on. And then you brought it with yourself. So I guess that now when we say, okay, I started my own school with one teacher, then on my own and stuff like that, but was it that easy? You know, like you describe it in one sentence, like I started my school and now cool, I have my love and I will live with my love till the end of my life. So what kind of challenges you experienced? Because now we are actually living in this kind of reality that people actually have to start thinking about themselves and what to do in the situation in which, you know, many people also lost their jobs and so on. Many people have different passions, but it's always like, oh, maybe I can't and so on, or let me try. Is it about passion, or what kind of difficulties, what kind of challenges we have to be ready to encounter and stuff like that? So that kind of experience or message, I would also like to provoke you to share.
Okay, well, first of all, this word passion always makes me want to throw up, really. I think it's so often used, and it's become so hollow. It's like, oh, I'm looking for my passion. I think it's awful, really, really awful. And the thing is, you don't the thing is, you don't realize that something is your passion because you just do it. And if you realize that with the time that you spend doing it, or that you go after those things that because you sort of enjoy doing it, I think that it's enough just to enjoy something. It doesn't have to be this full-blown passion. Like, I think this passion comes sort of with time, but I think if you enjoy doing something, then do it, and then just continue doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the message of doing it. Does something small that you enjoy, and then from then on, you kind of move on. I mean, you need also courage to take certain bigger steps when you want to do something more professionally, but you also need to be very smart about it. You need to understand all these problems and understand what the rules are and understand what the punishment is when you break the rules. But and lots of people, I think, don't have the courage to go out and confront all these things. But I think if you look at it as such a big, huge mountain, and you're going to, I want this big enterprise and I want to conquer the world and stuff. And then you go, oh, well, I don't think I will manage to conquer the world. And then they give up. So I think sometimes people shouldn't think so big straight away, but just start with something small. Like if you enjoy doing podcasts or enjoy interviewing people, or if you enjoy talking to people, okay, then I can interview people. Okay, then I can even make a podcast, and that's cool because then I can share share the beautiful things that other people know and share it to a big audience. And then sort of then one can think, okay, just go on from there. And then whether or not one becomes this famous podcaster is another question. But then just one continues with that, and then you can say, okay, how can I possibly make money, or how from this, how can, and I think it's with making music as a musician, and by just doing it, and then through being there, through being sort of in the circuit, you then know other people and they start to invite you, and then you start doing shows, and from a small show you end up to bigger shows. And but not everybody ends up being the Rolling Stones or something like that. But if you start off with thinking, oh, I want to be the Rolling Stones, that's I think that possibly could be the issue where it goes wrong. Yeah. Or I need to have a passion and I need to find this passion. No, just find something you enjoy, continue doing that, and work from there. So that's what I think is it.
Yeah, when you gave that example, actually, I like listening to people, listening to nice stories, like nice and encouraging stories. And this is actually why I, at the end, decided to ask you, because you remember that we spoke a few times actually about this topic. And it's for me, like, why should this story just stay stuck forever between you and me? Let's share it. There is your personal experience, there is your something like your personal tone that you added to that story. Also, there is, something about capoeira that maybe many people can be interested in. Many people are already, I know some people who are familiar with that activity also here. But it is also, to say something nice to encourage people, and also something that, for example, in this case, you are quite familiar with. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share maybe about this topic? Like something like a general.
I think it's really this thing from the inside that kind of that pulls you, and that goes through, and it's not so much something thought and something from the outside. And I think the outside and the thoughts push often something down for you not to do it, because there's hundreds and thousands of excuses to find not to do something, and it's very easy not to do something because I'm not flexible, because I'm not musical, because I can't do this, I can't do that. But then if you have something from the inside that sort of pulls you to, but I just love doing it, I just enjoy doing it, even if I'm not good at it yet, and I'm not a master, or I'm not this or that, then I think that sort of, if you have that feeling, then that's a lovely feeling. to go with, and not to sort of question it too much, and just go with it and continue on that path. And I think then you get there.
Yeah, Lisette, thank you so much for this message. And thank you so much for being here today, for your willingness to share your experience, also to share a part of your story. There is one part we can talk about after this talk, but really, thank you so much for your time and for everything that you shared today.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. It was a pleasure. Thank you for asking me. An honor.